beginning to get on my nerves. Who are those guys?
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to part 4 of episode 2 of our rewatch. You've got Pips, Alex, and Aludra doing the reviews again. Hopefully, you've all watched the prior ones, so let's skip our own intros. We just watched the worst White Cloak scene that we'll ever see, and we are now moving on with the ambition to get to the Wolf Lick. So, here, I guess to start off, and let's just freeform discussion. Egwene is taking Moraine to task for all the lies she just told Jeffrey Bornhold and Eamonveld.
Okay, yeah. That's why we usually travel together. Do blues usually travel together?
It's not really mentioned.
Well, we know that
They
Moraine
don't.
usually doesn't.
Mar-
So certainly
Moraine doesn't.
she's using sort of the royal we or
So,
something.
Oh,
if
ambassadors, I
pop-
guess, usually did groups of 3, but even like Elida was by herself and with Morgase.
I just mean at a minimum, if we conclude or includes yourself, we know because we've seen shots of Moraine and Land on their quest, and we know from the books, assuming that the books are any sort of background information for this, that we know she solo travels, just her and Land. So she just lied again.
but here's the other thing: not all Aes Sedai have a talent for healing. So
Also true.
even that becomes a problem. Some of them are established of having virtually no talent for healing whatsoever. So when Varen and Alana are in the two rivers in the Shadow Rising, and they need to get Alana to heal Perrin from that barbed arrow that's stuck through his ribs or whatnot, Varen is saying, I don't have any talent for healing. So Varen and Alana are traveling together because they can heal each other. Maybe, but not really, because Varen can't heal. The bigger issue I have with the scene that we just saw.
Or
Oops,
can we do a book thingy?
Yeah.
Maybe she was lying and she was under certain orders that if she got Perrin into a healing thing to do something to him. And she decided that in order to get out of that, she would claim no ability in healing.
I think she's consistent enough in that, so we can't know one way or the other, but we do never see her heal beyond, a bruise or something very simple.
Right.
So,
and I think it's also noted Sheriam can't heal more than a scrape or something.
Yes,
like that.
That
so
too.
There are other
Sheriam
sisters.
Well, and apparently Egwene and Elaine are both crap at it too.
So. Oh yeah, true enough. But the bigger issue I have with what we just saw was Moraine is the one who says the truth you hear might not be the truth you think you hear. That's the last thing an Aes Sedai would actually be saying about themselves.
I think that was from Tom, right? Either Tom or maybe it might have been
Tam.
I was going to say it might have been Tam. I was going to say it was either Tom or Tam.
I think they both did.
One of the two father figures, and this show is decidedly absent of good father figures.
But let's just sit and absorb that Moraine the Aes Sedai.
I think the showrunners are absent father figures.
Not true enough. But Moraine's making that comment, and she seems proud of it.
Yeah.
I could see this as sort of a Moraine is aware that the Black Aja exists, and that part of Aes Sedai training is teaching them to speak in sort of that coded language. But it does come off as kind of bizarre and sort of doesn't seem like something she would be saying around, especially a bunch of men.
All right, so looking down at the horses from here, let's see. I'm gonna look for Bella. Obviously, I'm the horse watcher.
There's no brown horse.
Wait a second, pause.
No, I'm just saying there's no brown horse. Bella's brown, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, okay. They're all just four black horses. Bella has been upgraded to just a full size horse. Okay. I was trying to do a size comparison.
They clearly don't really need food. They've just got bedrolls. They've got no saddlebags, really. Not worth speaking of.
Well, more than the Whitecloaks did. So where are they?
Biome shift.
Where are they in this scene? Oh man, that's so good. I
I'm
don't
pretty
think
sure this is a scene from Dragon Age Origins.
I was gonna say this is a really bad CGI background, and I don't actually remember
And
this in the
why,
original.
why it would be a
Watch.
quasi-Roman aqueduct as opposed to something, more fanciful.
An elevated highway, which was in Dragon Age Origins, and the visual graphics are about the same quality. Although Dragon Age, since it only came out in 2010, I think looks a little bit better.
We're about to get the song. They're gonna lay it on us. For the song, I think Alex, can you boost the volume a little bit so we can?
No, you don't want to hear him sing.
No. We're drunk enough. We can handle it now.
It's bad enough.
I don't know. Is that louder?
I don't know. We'll find out.
What? Ugh. What a terrible song.
I guess my issue is about the song
Okay,
itself so much as the fact that you just decided to
pause it there so we don't get hit
song.
with the algo.
Pause.
And all right, what's your breakdown there, Alex?
Again, this is one that had they done a montage of them singing songs previously, this might have been fairly well received. However, if you just have one of your characters randomly start singing for no apparent reason, it just sort of
isn't even a
seems
musical.
super convenient.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't mind storytelling with songs. It can be used to great effect, which Jordan does and other people have done. But they should have done say a song at Beltane and just to kind of set the stage for other kinds of singing that they do. But no, they're just bust out in song randomly here, and
so I agree with all that. So I generally dislike musicals because I think that I can suspend disbelief for lightsabers and lasers and spaceships and stuff. That's hey, in world this exists, got it. It's hard for me to suspend disbelief that people are going to change so fundamentally that somebody breaking out into show tunes is going to be received as normal sort of course of events, not that person's super high on drugs right now, And so the idea of people breaking out into songs in normal sort of manner or expositional songs especially pretty terrible in my mind.
I mean, clearly this is I think to credit them, they did do it in a simple enough style that it could be a folk tune from a backwoods thing, which is the first decent backwoods thing they've done. But once again, if you're going to have backwoods people randomly singing, why didn't they randomly sing at Beltane?
So, yep, I would agree with that. What I was going to say about it being, a folk song or something like that, right? They don't actually know anything about their history. In the actual lore around the Two Rivers is that they've basically, other places in the world still have stories about Manetheren, but the Two Rivers actually doesn't, because the Two Rivers is basically populated by mostly the orphaned children of Manetheren, right?
This is the funny thing. They establish this later on because Matt goes on to say he doesn't know who Manetheren is.
Yes. So they're singing this song, and then they're going to get to it and be like, we don't even know what this song is about, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. That literally who has everybody in the Two Rivers knows this song, and it's yeah, but we don't really know what it is. What? The
song gets passed down generation to generation. Lyrics and music by who knows, but it's so dang old. But we don't know what it's about anymore, but we're going to sing it anyways.
Also, the song contains the name Aemon, which is the derivation that, begets the name Emond, or Emond's Field. And so literally their town is named...
Just Two Rivers. It's just Two Rivers.
They never really introduced Emond's Field. I suppose that's fair. But it's just so laughably silly that, they don't know literally any of the things they're talking about. It's like think of like a similar sort of situation. You know, everyone knows the sort of like "Ring Around the Rosie" sort of like children's song, right? Which is the closest thing I can compare it to, right? And like most people, I would argue, at least before our education system went to shit, went down in flames, know that song has its origins in like the bubonic plague.
Right.
So like, and that's an even much more like distant sort of derivation of a story, right?
Well, I mean, I'd say Greensleeves is about 500 years old, so it's not quite. Yeah, it's not the 2000 that this, in theory, should be.
Yeah, I don't even know what Yankee Doodle means, so
that's because you're Canadian.
I have an excuse.
I don't know. It just seems really bizarre to me that somebody would introduce a song that's supposed to impart a story and then be like, we don't actually know the story.
It's even more bizarre in that you had a good context for the story that Moraine's about to tell in the books.
You did.
Yeah.
And here she decides to give us 3 minutes of exposition about Manetheren out of the book context, which removes all the impact from it.
All right, well, let's roll through the rest of this terrible song.
I guess I would take the position that that first episode is going to be busy as hell, minus a 3-minute song number. So I can see why they would have cut that.
Well, if they had
The
cut
issue is
episode 5,
Manetheren
they would have had time.
They spent the time launching those boats. They could have been singing while they launched the boats.
True.
That's a valid point. I think a song probably would have been, maybe more conductive to this medium than the speech. And I'm not gonna lie, it is a long speech in the book.
But if you did it properly, you would have ended your first episode either at the Narg invasion or when Rand stumbles into town.
Yep.
Either way, you'd have the Manetheren speech if you were going to do
episode
it in your second episode.
Agreed.
Right.
And it would have been another way to show powerful Moraine, by the way. Moraine standing up to the angry villagers again, and they left that out.
And winning their respect, because at the end of this whole Manetheren speech, there are a couple of villagers who said, "I, for one, I'm ashamed to be here.
Yep.
And you can stay here as long as you like, ma'am." And they turn around and leave.
Again, I don't think that necessarily plays out super well on TV, but anything would be better than this.
There's lifted lines from this, but there's also omitted lines. So, and this is the worst one. The men and women of the mountain home stood before. No, it was the army, the men of the mountain home of Manetheren, who ran back in time in order to defend their home, and they make a big deal out of it.
They were to protect their women
for as long as they did, but they held out as long as they did. But then on the 10th day, when they're sending out the orders for everybody to retreat, some of them, so the non-army folks, the woodsmen, the shepherds, they go to bolster the lines, but some of the women go too. And that is echoed in the Shadow Rising, in the chapter Golden Eyes, where it's the women, because the biggest jerk in the series, Dain Bornhald, refuses to stir from his spot on the green with his 400 children the light. It's the women then that decide to go in and reinforce the lines. And it's history rhyming or repeating. And there's a wonderful parallel put between that. But what this is basically implying is that Manetheren had an army of men and women in the Trolloc Wars 2,000 years ago. Because girl power.
I gotta say, even with the bastardized version of this story, even with the cuts, the reductions, all this stuff, still such a great story, and it's so frustrating that they did so little with it. I feel like they reduced it to like describing just a ripped off sort of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings. Ere the sun of the third day rises, which I know the third morning, I know that's in the books. I get it. Eye of the World
those are
especially is a heavy nod to Lord of the Rings. But still, the
those
show
are all
does.
lines. They're all lines lifted directly from the books about they've lasted for an hour and then a second, then a third, and the day count going up. But
Mhm.
they're what they're leaving out leaves out so much of the context. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like um, if you're gonna do the speech, either do all of it, because if you go half measures, it's gonna start falling flat, and
And that's
that's kind of what happens. And there are things in here like I read through this before we did this, but the as a reader, the first thing that you pick out is things like their king was Aemon Alcar Althorin, Aemon son of Car son of Thorin, and Eldrine I Alan I Carlan was his queen, and it comes a little bit later, but all the names in the two rivers, Cawthon and Copland notwithstanding, but the Al something or the I Bara or I Yellen, it all means son of or daughter of, and it brings a connection back to the history that she's telling. Now, obviously, they are going to skip over all that in the show, probably for time, but that part and parcel is what the world building is doing in this speech in the books, and it's like a half inflated balloon when all you give her is a couple lifted lines and you give it to Rosamund Pike to tell on a horse out of context. I'd rather have none of this than what we got.
that's an
It
interesting
absolutely
point.
should have been skipped. They don't. I mean, they don't do anything with it
That was kind of
unless
the.
they're going to say that this is the basis for the episode 8 Kamehameha. But
I mean, honestly,
Yeah, he,
that was the point I was
that,
making, that they do so little with it. So they completely removed Matt's actual use of the old tongue, not Dane's comment on him using it. So they completely
slurp.
removed that. They removed most of the like actual connections of the main characters to the Manetheren. Um,
Yep.
and so in doing so, I mean, from now on, when they say sort of Teshar Manetheren, it's going to be a joke.
Yeah, and let's not forget, towards the end of the Eye of the World, Lord Agelmar is told that the three farm boys, who he suggests, I'll give you three soldiers instead, not these green boys. And Moraine says they're the blood of Manetheren. And then even Agelmar goes, "Oh, I would not doubt that blood." Right? That could have been a throwaway line, but again, since they start changing who's going to the Eye of the World at the end, and they turn Agelmar into a horse's ass, you miss that
Hey,
opportunity as well.
I'm offended by the connection between me, my backside, and what they did to Agomar.
I retract it.
In the city, Queen Eldrine organized her people to take the children and find refuge in the mountain keeps, though many of them went not to safety.
So this much at least is true.
For
To
their
join the army fighting for their home. Yeah,
of ground has given up.
this is a line lifted from the books.
Mm-hmm.
But on the 13th day,
Is it 13 days? I don't want to double check. We can keep going.
the army of Manetheren was gone.
Like I said, even in this reduced form, like I still think this is a great, and like it's a really great story. I mean, Robert Jordan did a great job in constructing this as their sort of background. The story was well written. The lines that they pull, it works together still. Like it's just so underutilized. Giving it to them, just the couple of them on the road, means that now if Perrin ever goes back to the Two Rivers in his sort of the Shadow Rising kind of storyline to become Lord Perrin, all that other stuff, the people in Emmons Field are going to have zero idea about Manetheren or their sort of storied history, which is a huge part of like that connection and the backbone that they sort of remember through this speech is a part of their character. I mean, you can say it was there anyway, but I do think that they found a little bit of pride in themselves hearing it from Moraine, and so it's just been robbed. They aren't doing anything with it with Matt. So like they should have just cut it out of the story. To be honest, like Perrin is not going to go back and do Lord of the Two Rivers things on screen. I don't Matt, I don't know. He's a dark friend or
They're
something
not
now.
going to get that far.
Yeah, that's true. They're gonna get canceled before that. But let's be honest, like that wasn't even on the table in the first place. So like they should have just cut this. This is just exposition. It's a cool story in the books that Robert Jordan does a lot with. But for them, they're not gonna do anything with it. They
They
just
could have just left it in their origins, which I maintain
Yes.
should get the budget.
yes.
Yeah. Shout out to Matt, who apparently had an electric razor to shave himself upon waking up
Mhm.
today.
Yeah, he's less scraggly than he was earlier in the episode.
Oh God.
Got a well coiffed
And-
hair.
Let's be clear here. Queen Eldrine did not burn all the Trollocs away. She burned away all the Dreadlords and the generals, and then the Trollocs fled because they got their host was decapitated, essentially, of leadership. But little nitpick, I guess they're just not introducing what a Dreadlord is because that would take too much explaining.
Yeah, probably. Also, those would be female channelers. Can't have.
Not
The
necessarily.
Dreadlords were male and female.
So, I'm not going to say that I think that none of the channelers that were Dreadlords in the Trolloc Wars were male. There very well might have been some. However, if I was the
would have been
Army of
quite
the Shadow, I mean, only a connection to the Dark One given to specifically the Chosen protects them from madness. So any male
not specifically.
Well,
Dreadlords.
but what about the Aiel who went up to kill the Dark One? I mean, they've been doing that for thousands of years. So couldn't
they
the
were-
Aiel be
they
some of
were-
the Dreadlords?
They
from
were
Dark Wars?
turned
Yeah.
to become sort of puppets. Which okay,
But
Right.
if
Fair.
you're
You know what?
you get
No,
Shadow's protection. And
Aludra,
let's-
I think that's a fair point. That the male Dreadlords could easily have been turned by 13 Murdraw and 13.
Not just that. You would have anybody who found out that they could channel and didn't want to die probably got tempted to swear to the Shadow in order to get the Shadow's protection from the taint. So it actually probably would have been more common than you think.
I don't think that would
Yes,
have been
I-
possible before the seals started to break.
Well, here's the thing. I know Mazrim Taim and who he's supposed to be was retconned later in the books, but let's not forget he is a channeler who looks 35 and has held away the madness for decades. And if he's not Demandred, which was the whole theory going ahead, then he was someone who basically became a Dark Friend, swore to the Shadow, and was protected from the taint because of his oath to the Dark One. So it was a thing. Dreadlords being male and getting the protection from the Dark One from his own taint. I'm pretty sure that's canon.
I don't think there's anything near specific enough on that, Mark. We know that the madness takes different people at different rates.
But not the wasting. And not the sickness. Anyways. Fun that we have our little lore discussions in between here because there's really nothing going on but having these characters stand in front of vistas. And now they're back to where they just were. And, oh, did you just see that? I haven't seen a Trolloc in days, says Lan. How many days have they been traveling now? It's an open question to you guys because I think this is still the same day because they haven't camped in between.
I mean,
I think we did
They-
the math that it would take 45 days if you were following the book maps with reasonable. I think we said 40 miles a day.
So we're not getting a sense of any distance, but keep in mind she's got that wound in her shoulder still.
Yes.
And this is the first time we're seeing them camp again since earlier in the episode. It's only the Look, he's given the ring back, which she gave to him kind of the morning of them leaving their last campsite.
I'll believe you based on that. I would have said that I was willing to give them the montage sort of time warp, and they just forgot about the fact that she had a lethal sort of shoulder / directly heart wound. But you're right. Her getting the ring back is
this is 2 nights. It's
mother's milk in a cup.
They slept the one time, and then the night before that, they were fleeing at Terran Ferry. And he says, it's been days since I've seen Trollocs. Is it technically correct? But I doubt it. You wouldn't use that expression. It's like, I haven't seen a Trolloc since the ferry.
Yesterday and today. That's 2 days.
Yeah.
Well, it's an editing screw up. That scene would have been shot for after the White Cloak, um, you know, interaction. That they interspersed it with the singing and the montage incorrectly.
Pretty sure the whole show's an editing screw.
Oh man.
I despise this interaction.
Did Rand's shirt just flip sides? No, they flipped the camera. His buttons were on the other side just the shot ago.
Oh really? Should we go back and look? Like we know they did this before with the
So
earrings,
yeah,
you know.
go.
So it's right hand side there. She's
See?
right.
Oh man, gosh.
That's
She's
a
right.
bigger brain. That is a bigger brain catch than my thing with the 11 earrings.
The
Yeah.
question that I always
Nicely
wonder
done.
here is like, blocking and like setting up shots is like a pretty substantial sort of investment as they're going into this. After doing all of that work, like what drives people to later just like flip a shot?
Why is Rand collecting wood instead of chopping it?
He chops it a little bit later.
Well, because
but he
Perrin doesn't.
have an axe.
Perrin doesn't
If
have an
there's wood-
axe.
if-
Well, right, but
Yeah,
I'm just it's just purely weight division of labor. I'm
So,
sorry, women should be gathering the sticks.
I'm
and
actually
men should be
gonna-
chopping the bigger wood.
I'm actually gonna
Yeah, I
point
feel
this
like
out.
if you only need to camp for a night and you think there's enough
Yeah, I
wood
guess.
gathered, I don't hate
I'm
it.
actually going to point this out that this is clearly people who live in a city and have never spent any time in the woods. They're
Once
going out.
again,
They're going out and picking up like fallen wood that is on the ground, which is almost sure to be wet and actually
Half
no
rotted.
good for burning. So
well, it's like if you get it where it's quasi dry, under a bush or something, and it's good for tinder. Get the fire started, but yeah, not good for burning.
anyway,
Perfect.
Wait, where'd
Rand.
that river
Thank
come
you.
from?
They were walking
Homeward.
past it.
Oh, I
It
guess
is
there. I
underground.
guess there it is. It wasn't as obvious in the
It honestly might have
other
been on the
shots.
other side, given that they've been flipping the
shirt around. Yeah.
film. Yeah.
Again, actually kind of a big fan of Rand sticking up for himself here.
Yeah.
what a low bar that we've set for Rand. Just don't literally be a spineless, worthless.
Well,
I'll ta-
considering
I'll-
how low
I'll
they
ta- I'll
set the
take
bar.
I'll take stupid. Just don't give me simping.
But maybe this is what
You
exactly
won't even
why
look at
people
me.
tend to
He's-
rate this. People tend to rate this episode.
Oh,
the
that's so
highest
good.
out of
Look at
all
her.
of them.
I just want you to look at me. So not only is he a simp, she is literally a thought.
Sorry, I won't subscribe to your OnlyFans.
Oh.
Here,
and
take all my
Sniffles,
money from last harvest.
Oh God. All right, we're getting close to our final scene. Howling in the distance. It doesn't say. Well, I
It's
think
not
there's some
dogs
barks
barking
coming
yet,
up.
so
Not yet. That's in a later episode, but we do hear some barking. This, I mean, how many conversations have they had now about Aes Sedai and healing, and Perrin could get fixed? And this is what's weirder is, okay, the dog comes to lick this, and then his problem of his giant gash in his leg kind of goes away. And that looks infected, dude. Like, you need some frickin' penicillin. And a dog's lick is not going to make it any better. It's going to make it worse.
it's a magic dog's lick.
Maybe.
You'd think city folk would have at least a little better understanding of first aid.
I despise the shot with all my heart.
All right, let us
I
hear it,
hate
Alex.
these wolves. I hate these wolves so much. Okay, let's take a truly
break it down.
dog shit property. Let's say Twilight. Twilight at least managed to get good, intimidating wolves, and I think we talked about this in the first episode. Is how many of these do you think it would take to take down a Trolloc? Like 40. The
Probably,
idea.
yeah. My neighbor's dogs are bigger than these.
Right? And there are people that are going to defend this, and they're going to say, well, these are red wolves, and red wolves are smaller. To which my response is going to be, well, that's stupid. Wolves in this universe need to be able to take down Trollocs and Fades. So shut up. And when you're getting beat by something like frickin' Twilight, that's embarrassing. And it's extra embarrassing when people are like, well, oh, they used practical effects. These are real dogs. Stop using practical effects when practical effects don't make sense. Be better at your flaming job.
Yes, good job, Alec. All right, let's good clap there for proper use of the term flaming. Awesome. But yeah, I mean they
Snarling,
use
barking.
CGI
Ah,
for
there you go.
throw.
Barking. So
Yep.
even though it doesn't say dogs barking, it should be noted that wolves don't bark.
Well, here's some snarling. And there's 5. Are those the same dogs or are those different dogs?
There are on the other side of it. But again,
Maybe
they
we'll
probably
see a shot
only
with all of them.
they probably only have 5 dogs. The wig budget used all the money for dogs.
What is Perrin doing here? He's just
being all nervous.
Standing there open mouthed, like Perrin always does.
What I love about
That's-
this is that he's just like, "Yep, I'm concerned about this, but I'm not going to do anything." Like,
that's a straight up dog.
That looks
And-
like Bluey.
Oh my!
Well, Bandit. If I'm honest.
Like the coloring is not even a what? Like that's a German Shepherd something else. What did we say these dogs are? Alaskan sheepdogs or whatever it is.
Yeah, they're crosses.
so I do think those were the same wolves / dogs, and that they did move them from one half to the other half because the first shot we saw them, right? We see him, and behind him, behind the log that he's standing in front of, we see the wolf, right? And then we see the wolves on the other side, and we see them run away, running under the log and off into the distance. So they sort of teleported the wolves, I guess.
I think there were
Well, let's see
5
what-
in the opening shot, so let's count.
Can we confirm that they
Oh, we
were?
got
We
a
got a
few
couple
more.
more. That's
Can
7.
we
Eight
can we
there?
confirm that
7,
they were
8?
on the other side of that log though at the first
Alright.
shot?
Holy crap! We've reached as far as we needed to reach in this.
Yeah.
Because so we're kind of done. Now, my summary thoughts, at least for this little part, I think we went a lot quicker than we've done in prior episodes. But that's largely because a heck of a lot of the scenes were basically just traveloguing and riding on horses through the woods and not a whole lot of dialogue. It was basically 2 real scenes. We had the Whitecloaks interrogating them, and then we had the Song of Manetheren with a couple other things spackled in. I think we are finding fewer things wrong with this episode because less happens. And ironically, this is one of the higher rated episodes if you look on Metacritic or IMDb. I guess people had less issue with this episode because they did less with it. That being said, I think we've hit on basically everything that we can of what they're doing wrong. The Manetheren speech is completely out of context. Some of the best lines are dropped from it. The Whitecloaks interrogating them act completely out of character and act idiotically. And as we've went through ad nauseum in the prior episode, Master Hightower jumping into the water and getting murdered, that makes absolutely no sense. And then the just switching of characters, Egwene first being on Moraine's side, accusing Moraine, and then going back to defending her, like inconsistencies on multiple levels. So it is still a terrible, terrible episode, but it's somehow not as bad as the first one, I think. What do you guys think? Which one's worse so far?
The first one is worse. The first one has more technical issues, more characterization issues, more plotting and pacing issues. It tries to deal with heavier topics and fails to address them. This is just a failure of just being sort of a boring episode and not doing, being bad with what you're doing, but not doing a lot.
So it does less worse, but that's because they have to do a lot of horse riding from one shot to the next.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. To be honest, if I were to go back and look at my episode by episode, ratings on, I don't know, I think I rated them on IMDb and maybe Rotten Tomatoes, although I think that only to season. I do think that I gave this one of the higher ratings that I gave an episode. I think that I rated 1 really, really low. I think that I rated 2, 3, and 4 all as like, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7, sort of maybe like 5 to 6 range, I guess, and then downhill from there for the rest of the season. So this was, in my original watch, was like, okay, they did the arrogance and all of this other garbage in episode 1, and they really ruined a lot of stuff. But here we are, we're on the road, we got the group of people, they're traveling out, they're starting their adventure. So this is more or less trying to get back on track. And I think in the rewatch, I can, like you said, it's just that they did so little overall in this episode that like there's less to be offended by. And I think that after watching episode 1, less to be offended by probably coded in my brain as like this was a decent episode.
Right. So you can't mess up any of the lore if no one's saying anything and all they're doing is riding on a horse. So that's why this episode gets a higher mark. Aludra, what do you think? Keeping in mind, like we've only kind of kept you on for these 2 scenes, but feel free to discuss anything that we've covered so far or will cover. But what do you think of this episode so far?
I think with the whole like quality thing, I definitely recall as I watched it, it's like, okay, 1 was absolutely terrible, even as an adaptation. It's like if you completely divorce it, oh, sorry, even by itself, not as an adaptation. Number 1's absolutely terrible, and 2 and 3 and even 4, at least if you completely divorce it from Wheel of Time, I mean, aside from the things I just noticed with the shirt flip and whatever, it's as its own independent product seems to be a little more coherent. Has its own thing that it does and is not completely terrible.
It's more passable TV.
Right. Yeah, just as generic, I guess, fantasy people on a horse show. It's all right. As a Wheel of Time product, it's still absolutely, it's
It's hot garbage.
Ragnar's a flaming goat kissing Trolloc. So yeah,
it's not the worst, but I think my whole point is it's not the worst simply because there's less of it to make worse because they have to put in all those travel scenes. I don't know. Should we give last word to Alex on this? I know I spoke at length about it, but let's hear a couple technical points to kind of lead us out on this, and then obviously next week or sometime we'll finish this episode off and recap it.
Let's see. I guess from a technical standpoint, from a writing standpoint, like this is actually a lot harder of an episode to write than the first episode because there is, uh, trying to come up with enough events to communicate the passage of time when a lot of these events aren't big events is tough. So I can see why, this episode, would be emptier just because, it's tough to do. But the issue is that only works as an excuse if you don't consider how much was left in the first episode. Like we're now 25% into this, and none of the 3 Two Rivers boys have a skill. Like they're still completely worthless. And it's just bad, and it's terrible characterization, and it leads to an audience not caring about these kids. And it's just a result of everybody involved in this production not caring about these characters and just wanting to get to the White Tower. So I don't know. This is just a tough episode almost to gauge, just because I don't know. It wasn't something super great for TV like the first episode should have been, and then they just did a shit job with it. So I don't even know what to say here.
I would maybe this will kind of lead us out, but I would say in the benefit of a rewatch, we know how it gets worse, or just it doesn't redeem itself in the later episodes. And the points you're making, Alex, they're good. We don't see any development of skills. We don't see any characterization build up. They're still perpetuating that mystery. The passage of time they completely get wrong, because, as I noted, this looks to be like the second night after Terran Ferry where they're camping, both informed by the ring being handed back, as well as but then Lan inexplicably says he hasn't seen a Trolloc for days, which is also stupid. And then Moraine, who's again not injured in the books, but she's heavily injured here, she starts to go bad fast. In that, at least for the remainder of the episode, she's incapacitated by her wound. But we'll get to that in our next episode of our recap. But yeah, I think people only rated this episode high in the context of being disappointed by episode 1, but seen holistically, um, this episode is not good as a standalone, and if anything, it only rates higher than other episodes in the series because there was less of it to offend you, because so much of the time was wasted on traveling. That's my view.
Yeah, I think that's a very succinct summary.
Good point.
All right, Aludra, thanks for joining us for this part of the rewatch.
You're welcome.
And if you're interested, we could maybe have you on an episode later on. Again, we're doing a lot of these, 3 or 4 episodes per episode. So hopefully we get it all done before season 2 comes out. But hopefully season 2 never sees the light of day. So I guess we'll leave it at that.
Flicker, flicker, flicker. I win again.
We could only be so lucky.
That's how they're gonna do it. Mark our words. That's how they'll do it. Amazon cancels Wheel of Time. Flicker, flicker.
And at the end of every story, as he lay dying, as he drew final breath, a voice whispered in his ear, "I have won again, Luz Theron." Flicker, 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 flicker.